Okesksanamatsik Nistoko kotakokitope. Kiantoksistiko takotepoe. Sukinikiapi. Toki stu sikitamiksistiko. It's a good day. Nistoko kotakokitope. It's otakokitope or Kolton. And today I'm going to be talking about sukinikiapi or health or well-being. Yeah, let's get started. With health. Okay. So we're going to be talking about health and sickness and then some related grammar today. So first we'll start, like always, with a conversation. But sukinikiapi, well-being. And it's going to be between Zoe, a male character, and Makinita, the female character. Okay. Zoe. Kres, yeah. Kitsakia skina. Makinita. Ja, kistunne toi. Zoe. Sakanist semuursp, Makinita. Nedasuk semuurs. Kisto. Zoe. Netquimurs. Makinita. Tamaska. Kdestosp. Zachta kdexistosp. Zoe. Matsksenisp. Sikanistsitak. Nachkamestosp. Makinita. Kita pohpitesukinaakio. Zoe. Sa matqueke. Makinita. Ja, kakstaput itesukinaakio. Zoe. Sa takapestotak. Asoyopuksikin. Makinita. Han. Now I'll go over the conversation with the translation. So Zoe says, Kitsake say skina. Kitsake say skina. She's saying, geez, you keep coughing, or you're still coughing. Then Makinita says, Ya, kisto netoy, or Ya, kisto netoy, which means, geez, you too, or you as well. And as we remember, tss is used by males and ya is used by females. To kind of say geez would be a good English word, but it is a complex word. And then Kitsake say skina, you are still coughing. Sak means to still be doing something. And then say skina is coughing. And then Zoe says, Tsakanistimosp, or Tsakanistimosp. How are you feeling? How are you feeling about yourself? Makinita says, Nadasuksimors. Gisto? Nadasuksimors. Gisto? Nadasuksimors means I feel good about myself, which more so in English would translate to I feel good. I feel fine. You? And then Zoe says, Netquimors. Netquimors. I feel sick. And then Makinit says, Damaska, Krestos, Ptachta, Krexistos. Damaska means kind of like poor thing. And it's a term that typically only women use, or men will use more so sarcastically. But it's generally pretty rare to hear a man use Damaska. Seriously, it's generally only used as a joke, but women use it to say, like, poor thing, poor little thing. Damaska. And then she says, Krestos. Are you, do you have the cold? Istos means to have the cold. And she says, Tsachta, or Krexistos. Kidexistos means, do you have a fever? Ixistos. means to have a fever. So she's saying, poor thing, do you have a cold or do you have a fever? So he says, Matskini, Matskini means I don't know. Means I feel like, or I think, I believe. Nachkamestos means I might have a cold. So tsikanistzitak nachkamestos means I feel like I might have a cold. And then makanita says, kita kita poch piteso kinakyop. Kita kita poch means are you going to go to a place? And then iteso kinakyop means hospital. Then Zoe says, sa matkweke. Sa means no, and then matkweke is, we use it a lot in Blackfoot to say it's nothing, essentially, or it's no big deal, or it's fine. It can mean a lot of things. It's a very versatile word. Makanita says, yeah, which means, geez, just go to the hospital. Gakstaput means just go to a place. Gakstaput. And then itesukanakyob is the hospital. And then Zoe says, Sa takapestotek asoyopuk sikin. Makanita says, Han. So we see Sa, no. Takapestotek, I'm going to make asoyopuk sikin. Tea. Asoyopuk sikin is how we say tea in the Skapi Piegan dialect. The Southern Piegan dialect, we say asoyopo kisikimi, which means leaf water. And I believe in the Ghana and Siksika dialect, maybe even Northern Piegan, they say asiksikimi, which means black water. But down here, that's how we say coffee. So in short, asoyopo kisikimi in the States is how we say tea. Asiksikimi, or in the north is how they say tea. The Makanita says Han, which is like saying, okay. So Zoe is saying, no, he's not going to go to the hospital. He says, I'm going to make tea. And then Makanita just says, okay, fine. Or there it is, sir. Yeah. Can mean a lot of things. Han can just agreeing, we're just saying, all right. And so now let's learn about some grammar points. The first one that I'm going to talk about is reflexive grammar points. And what a reflexive verb is, or a reflexive, I guess, conjugation, as in you're doing something to your action word, it just means that the person is acting on themselves. So when I say reflexive, I'm just meaning that the person that I'm talking about is acting upon themselves. They're doing something to themselves. So, for instance, if we take the word honest, to tell someone, it's a transitive verb, meaning it's acting on someone. Honest, to tell someone. For example, a normal conjugation would be in netanista. I told him, or her. Netanista. I told him. But if I add this urs, which is the way that we conjugate for the reflective, we have reflexive, we have the verb plus an urs at the end. If I add that to our verb and say, netanistors, means I tell myself, or I told myself, netanistors. And we use it the same way that we do in English, but there are a few ways, and by the way that we use in English, for instance, netanista, I told him, netanistors, I tell myself, the same way that we would say it in English, same usage, same meaning. But there are also several instances in Blackfeet where it doesn't really make sense in terms of English. In other languages, they have reflexive, but if your language is English, there are multiple usages in Blackfeet where we use the reflexive, where it doesn't make sense. And so, like I've said, we use reflectives to show that somebody's acting on themselves. Like I tell myself, he tells himself, you tell yourself. But we could also use it to describe feelings that are relating to the body. And what I mean by that is when you're talking about, let's say your hand and you want to talk about how it feels, sometimes we're going to use the reflective to say you feel that way about your hand. And it's not saying that you're thinking that way about your hand, that you feel like if you, I'll have to show some examples, but yeah, if you're talking about your body, feel, or discard my example, the hand is not a good instance, but if you want to talk about the way that your body feels, we use the im or the, but yeah, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. When we describe bodily feelings like being sick or feeling ill or feeling anything like that, we use the reflexive. And so it's not really that easy to explain, so I'll just show you. For instance, im means to feel something about someone. Im. Immurs means to feel a way about oneself. Immurs, pretty simple. But we use it a little bit different. It's not as simple as we would think. For instance, if I said nitsuksimma, nitsuksimma, we remember im is to feel a way about someone. This makes sense. Nitsuksimma. I feel good about him. I like him. Nitsuksimma. But if we say nitsuksimmus, that sounds a little bit strange when we translate it directly. I feel good about myself. It has a different kind of connotation in English. I feel good about myself. More so makes you think about one's ego or one's self-esteem. But when we say it in Blackfeet, nitsuksimmus, we're talking about the way that our body feels, not necessarily we're not really talking about ourselves as a person, but your body. So when we say nitsuksimmus, I feel good about myself. That's not saying you have a good self-esteem, you feel prideful or anything like that. It's saying that your body feels fine, feels good. And we use that more so in the health kind of meaning to say that you feel good, you feel healthy, whatnot. And so the instance that we saw in our story was nitquimors, nitquimors, which literally means I feel undesirable about myself. Nitquimors. And so this is where it can kind of get confusing because when we directly translate from English or from Blackfoot to English, you want to almost take on a different meaning. It feels like it would mean something else. Nitqui, because ohque means undesirable, to the contrary. So you're saying nitquimos. I feel contrary about myself. I feel undesirable about myself. And when I say that in English, it almost feels like I'm talking about myself as a person, like denoting that I have poor self-esteem. But that's not really what it means in Blackfoot. We use nitquimos as a way to say I feel sick. Because when I say I feel undesirable kind of about myself, I'm not really talking about me as a person, I'm talking about my body. So when I say nitquimos, I feel like I'm talking more so about my health. Like I just have an undesirable feeling. I have a bad feeling within. And that's how we say I'm sick. Kind of just saying it more so means like I feel sick. And so here are a few more examples about the reflexives. So if we take the word essami, or essam means to look at someone. Essami, she or he is looking at him or her. And if we add our reflexive essamos, she or he is looking at him or herself. Essamos, they're looking at themselves. for instance, in the mirror. Or if I'm using the first person, nita ko mimos. Nita ko mimos. I strange. My apologies, I didn't write the proper translation. I just wrote the Blackfeet word. Nita ko mimos means I love myself. Nita ko mimos. And as you could see, akomim is love, and then ux is the reflexive. So it's saying I'm doing this about myself. So I love myself. Nita ko mimos. And then with the second person, graxim status. Graxim status. You think about yourself. Graxim status. Exim stat means to think about someone. So graxim stat means you think about blank, blank, blank. And then urs is making it so you're acting on yourself. So graxim status, you think about yourself. And then again, for the grammar point. Now for the cultural point. And so in terms of health, it is men don't really talk about don't often describe feelings in Blackfoot culture. And then with the health, people don't often talk about health. It's not necessarily a stigma for somebody to talk about their health, but it's just kind of a phenomena that people don't really describe their health. They kind of don't talk about it. I mean, a lot of people do. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's also not the most common thing. And then men just don't really describe their feelings much. So for instance, you wouldn't really say nitsuksimus or nitokwimus. But anyway, genye for this lesson. And I'll see you all later.